So before I wrapped up this project and send it, call it done, um, I wanted to just do a quick summary of what was implemented. So the idea is that we're building a transaction processor. So we have deposits, withdrawals, um, disputes, resolutions, and chargebacks. So I started off with the main file, which uh, reads the transaction.csv. So what's happening over here? It's using the CSV module, CSV crate. We read all the files and we do our own parsing. The way we're parsing is we're implementing like from. So we're converting the string record that's coming from the CSV reader into a transaction, and the transaction object uh, is basically the transaction type, client, TX, and amount. That's basically the everything that's in the input side. However, I added a flag to determine whether a transaction is disputed or not, because this is useful later on uh, when it comes to handling resolve and chargebacks. So, all right, and the way it works is for every single row, we parse it and create a transaction from it, and then we do a transaction. We created a struct called transaction processor, and that's going to process all of our transactions. Um, at a high level, once all the transactions have been processed, we can go ahead and ask the processors to get the current account states, and then print everything to the standard output. And basically, if you were to run it, you can actually collect the output into the accounts.csv file. I also have a few tests in each of these files. So the transaction has a couple of simple tests. The account has a couple of simple tests as well. Just to make sure that we are able to test the deposits and the withdraw failing if you don't have sufficient funds. I mean, you can take a look at this stuff. And the transaction processor has a few tests. There were a lot more tests that I wanted to add, but I just didn't get around to adding it. Just ran out of time. And it was also a little bit tedious to add all these tests all the time. So yeah, I would, if it was like an actual project, I would definitely add more tests. And but anyway, it is what it is. So yeah, so you can basically build it with cargo build, and you can test it with cargo test. So there's about 20 test cases, and I have like another 8 test cases that I wanted to do, but anyway. And you can also run it. Sorry. Yeah. So why don't we take a quick look at the README, which contains all the test cases that I have. So there's instructions on how to run it, build it, and test the files. There's a few assumptions as well. Ideally, I wanted to run I want to run this. Basically, I wanted to use U128 instead of Float 64 because I thought it would be a lot safer to use it for additions and stuff. It's just a little bit better when it comes to overflows, as you can see on the screen. Like, it has the checked add method, so if there is an overflow, it just returns a null, right? So we have a little bit of opportunity to write a safer code. But I ended up going for F64 because it was easier to parse, and I mean, these are credit card transactions, right? So what are the odds that someone's going to create an overflow? Maybe there is, but for this scope, it was okay in my opinion. Yeah, so actually this is not true anymore. So disputed transactions apply to deposits, and the reason why they apply to deposits is because you're charging the credit card when a deposit is being made into uh, you know, the company. So after an account is locked, there are no more transactions that are done on that account. So let's say there's a chargeback and you do a whole bunch of deposits afterwards. Nothing's getting to be like nothing will be um, processed. You could process. I mean, there's different ways to think about it, right? So if you want to process deposit but not the withdrawals, it's possible we could do that. But I just did a blanket rule that says if an account is locked, no more transactions. Um, Generally, I prefer to fail fast, but the expectation is that we want to process all the transactions, return the status of the accounts rather than failing at some point somewhere in the middle. So and then yeah, I just commented some tests that I wanted to write but I didn't get a chance to complete. So there's a few test cases. Sorry, I'm gonna mute for a second. Okay, back. Yeah, there's a few test cases. The first one is just to make sure that deposits are working. Standard, just deposit twice and make sure the values are correct. The second thing is to make sure that withdrawals are working. Again, a standard test. Then I wanted to make sure that withdrawals and, well, I mean, again, this is just another test that's very similar to the first two. I wanted to do a chargeback to make sure that the account is locked and this is the output that you're expecting to see. I wanted to also do a dispute to make sure that it holds the funds in the dispute. And same thing, you wanted to do a dispute and then resolve it. So the funds that it's kind of same as the one before, so you can kind of see that the funds were held and then the funds would become available and they will no longer be held. I wanted to do something where it involved withdrawals, disputes, and resolving of that dispute. So a little bit longer, like a few more transactions for this particular user. I wanted to test disputing, resolving, and disputing the same transaction again as well. So, and that was okay. That was working fine. And then the last one was a little bit more of the nefarious kind, right? So I wanted to make sure that we were able to dispute and then do a chargeback. And obviously, if you do a chargeback, your account is getting locked. And basically some links to the live coding sessions. Yeah, that's it.